Let's watch a cartoon where I'm just a normal human like all of you viewers.
That's kind of a weird thing to say.
Huh. I'm Alec, this is my brother Lucas, and welcome to Alien Month of Hester Bros Cartoon Theater. Today, we are talking about the famous cult classic cartoon Invader Zim, and asking the question, is that show for kids?
And is it for adults?
Before we get into this episode, I do want to just open at the top and say, Happy Alien Month! This month, we are going to be reviewing a different cartoon each week, featuring aliens of some kind. We thought that we'd kick it off with one of the most famous ever, one that was very popular in our middle schools and high schools, and that is Invader Zim. If you guys are interested in seeing more content like this, go ahead and subscribe. It really helps us do more things like this in the future, and let us know what you think of this theme and what other shows you might want to see us cover.
And let us know what your favorite alien-inspired cartoon canons are.
That's right, I love aliens so much I might as well be one. Here on a special mission. This is a show called Invader Zim. It's about this alien who was sent from his planet to conquer the Earth. He doesn't realize that his home planet actually sent him there to get rid of him. They don't even think that Earth is a real place, and yet he is very, very stuck to his cause. So he disguises himself as a human child and basically goes to school, and every episode is him trying to, in a different way, enslave the human race, or just learn more about Earth along the way.
Or at least be really petty against this one other character who's his nemesis.
Yeah, so there's this nemesis, the character named Dib, and he's the only one in this universe that actually seems to be on to Zim's plot. But he can't get anyone to believe him, because they all think that he's crazy, and he thinks that they're all very stupid, which does happen to be the case.
Alec, I want to ask you what your history is with this show. I'm very excited to talk about this episode that we watched today, which was...
A Room with a Moose.
That's right. How did I forget?
I'm just gonna come out and say it, Lucas. I hated this cartoon as a kid. This was one of my least favorite things on TV. Every time they showed clips from it, I thought it was dark and uninteresting and all the characters were unlikable. It's funny because you're younger than me, but I was going to say this show was for an older audience, even at the time for me. So it was an especially older audience for you. I'm actually a little bit surprised to already seeing you disagree with me on this take, because we were a little young for it.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know you didn't like this show. This is going to be a very interesting video today. I freaking loved it, dude. It gave me this feeling of, I don't want to say dread, because it wasn't actual dread, but it was like creative dread. It gave me like Courage the Cowardly Dog vibes, but even darker than that. It was less slapsticky and more leaning into the horrendous nature of these characters in this show premise. I did think it was really weirdly funny because the juxtaposition between the comedy and the darkness of it is just like so stark. My favorite example in this episode, all of the kids in these elementary schools are so mean-spirited throughout this whole show. Horrendously mean to both Zim and Dib. Okay, so basic plotline of this episode. Zim gets his elementary school class onto a bus, tries to send them through a wormhole to a room with a moose in a different dimension. And this moose eats walnuts, and that apparently is scary. The hilariousness of the fact that this alien just trapped children and put them on a bus hurtling to another dimension. But that dimension then is a moose, and then the kid Dib is like,
what's so scary about a room with a stupid moose in it? I mean, yeah, that's a big moose, but really...
Oh, I will show you! Prepare your bladder for imminent release!
And then the moose cracks and eats walnuts. And then Dib is like, and that's so ridiculous. Like, what? Dib obviously tries to, like, get everybody to safety and tries to save the day. The true protagonist of the show that nobody roots for. When they're on the bus, all of the kids in one scene are just on the other side of the bus from Dib. And I looked at that and I'm like, what a hilarious little subtle mean thing where literally every single person in this class is on the other side of the bus from this kid, right?
Yeah.
And then it ends up actually being a plot point. because everyone needs to be on the other side of the bus to steer it in a different direction from the room with the moose. And Dib has to literally force himself to go to the other side of the bus so everyone else will shift over. And it's so absolutely inane and ridiculous and so mean. And it creates this hilarious tension with how dark the premise of the show is. And I love it.
Well, Lucas, if I was an alien, and I'm not saying I am, I also find this plot to be rather unsensible as far as conquest goes, as far as Earth goes. It's interesting to see your point of view on this. I had a feeling that you were going to like this more than me. You mentioned Courage, the Cowardly Dog as a comparison. That is a show that as a kid I also found was too dark for my taste, but as an adult I've grown to really love the creepiness of it all. And I was kind of expecting to come into Invader Zim today with a similar type of opinion. And I would say that I appreciated it more. I got what they were going for. I feel like the show is very unique. It really knows what it is. It is interesting that you have a cartoon that theoretically is on a children's network where the main protagonist is the villain of the show. And then the antagonist is kind of the hero who's actually pretty well-meaning despite getting bullied for being the conspiracy theorist that is actually on to everything that's going on with Zim. I think that my problem, though, is that he's still unlikable, and so is Zim. And basically every single character in this show, except for Gur, Zim's assistant, who we get very little of in this episode,
Greetings, children of Earth! This is your new school announcer.
Is very unlikable. You were mentioning that every single kid in the class is so mean-spirited. That's obviously completely intentional, and that's the creative angle that they're going for. You even get that from the teacher, who's extremely creepy. She has a hilarious line.
So, right around there, a negative stigma was attached to the idea of surviving on human flesh.
You can see, like, the edges in the animation style, like the way that they're really trying to make you feel jarred from the dark tones and the way that everything looks. I almost got the vibe if you bring Tim Burton in the Twilight Zone and kind of put it together. Despite all of those like glowing things that I say about the concept of the show itself, the execution didn't meet the concept for me. And I know that that's going to be a very unpopular take because a lot of people really love the show Invader Zim, but I don't want to give too much credit for something that I generally didn't like all that much, even on a rewatch. While those themes were there, it sort of felt to me unnecessarily dark, that there were no real redeeming qualities that made it fun for me to watch.
I left this thinking I'm literally going to rewatch every single episode from episode 1.
I knew you were going to say that.
Let me explain to you why you're wrong.
Okay.
First of all, I gotta take a minute. This was pretty much all I even wanted to talk about in this episode, is all about the animation, right? You said like Tim Burton meets the Twilight Zone. The canted angles, the way that the classroom curves into the corners, the greens and pinks, it's dark, but it's not dull. It's striking. Sure. There's these angles that make you feel uncomfortable. It's kind of like Courage the Cowardly Dog, but even more exaggerated. I remember the classroom. It's like on a fisheye lens almost, and it's creepy. It is kind of dark and grim, but you also have these bright greens, like obviously Zim stands out pretty hardcore. The music really complements that too.
Yeah, I agree. Love the music.
On one hand, you'd be saving yourself. On the other hand, you'd also be saving them.
Those things together just create this really unique atmosphere that other shows couldn't have accomplished. Courage the Cowardly Dog is probably one of the only animated shows that I can think of that did that. If you, audience, can think of any, leave them in the comments, because if I don't know about them, I'm sure I want to. In regards to there not being any redeeming qualities or characters, I think the relationship between Zim and Dib is absolutely charming. Because think about this exact episode. Zim literally sets up a video chat with Dib from the head of the bus because he knows Dib is the only person who's smart and curious enough to go in there, and he even compliments him.
As you may have already guessed, this is a trap. You're really one of the only people who can appreciate the amazingness of this plan, so I'll let you in on what it is.
There are episodes that play with that. They kind of love each other. Imagine what would happen if Zim wasn't there anymore. Dib's meaning in life would be gone. This brings him so much happiness in this cat and mouse chase. It's like Tom and Jerry. and even though it's a dark
okay.
show, they have this actual character development with each other throughout the show. And this show reminds me of Billy and Mandy too. That's another show that does that kind of creepy vibe really well.
I like that one though. I really do. So that's interesting.
What do you like about Billy and Mandy? Not that we want to spend too much time on it, but I'm curious.
I really liked the comedy of Billy and Mandy, and I don't think that I liked the comedy in this one, interestingly. I think the humor for you came in the juxtaposition and about the intelligence of it. I get that for sure. And I it's not that I didn't understand that, but it didn't necessarily like bring me laughter in the same way. Billy and Mandy will make me laugh. Courage will make me be like, whoa, that is insane for a kid's show. And I think that Invader Zim is maybe a weird bridge of those two, but I like both of those for different reasons, and I didn't necessarily like the mesh of it all, if that makes sense.
Courage makes me laugh and think, oh my god, this isn't a kid's show, but Invader Zim, I know you probably don't remember a lot of it because you didn't watch it. There are some really dark episodes in this show. It did go places that even Courage didn't quite go. Comparing it to Billy and Mandy, Billy is just dumb, and I don't like dumb characters. I've said this about lots of things on the show. I don't like Patrick, I don't like Billy. There's all these characters. It's like, if your personality trait is you're an idiot, I think that's terrible writing and boring characters.
But if that comes in contrast to other characters that are not like that, then that can actually be a really fun dynamic. It's not like the entire show is that way. It almost brings levity to something that would be lacking, I think, without those characters. And Billy and Mandy are such opposite characters that they interact well. With that said, I think you made an amazing point about how Zim and Dib interact. And I think that just the articulation of how you said that, how despite it being mean-spirited, there is joy in the interaction between these two characters, that makes me like it more. When I come into it with that mindset, with that approach, it would make it a more enjoyable experience for me to watch as a viewer, thinking about it from those terms. So I like that.
I really think you might want to give a couple more episodes a shot, because I think it's a very special cartoon. And this is a show that we're going to cover again at some point. Not to tease something, but we have a new series idea that's on the horizon, and I'd love to do this for that series.
Let's just tease it. We're going to be doing a show called Weird Cartoons, and we're going to try to delve into just some of like the weirdest cartoon concepts. Some of them that are absolutely ridiculous, and some famous shows that are also ridiculous but became famous. So subscribe if you guys are interested, because we'd love to have you on board for that ride. It's going to be really fun.
Yes, and leave some suggestions in the comments of some shows that are just absolutely bizarre, intensely wacky or dark, or, you know, whatever you think quantifies one of the weirdest shows that you could imagine. We'll be doing our first one at the end of this Alien month, so stay on this ride for that. Give us some juicy recommendations in the comments.
Lucas, let's get to the verdict here, because I think we've been skirting around this idea of who the real audience is for this show. I get the feeling that you have a very strong idea for that. So I'm going to pass it to you. What do you think?
I definitely think that it is for kids and teens. I think it's for kids and teens who like darker content. And I think that actually most adults would probably enjoy it as well. My one caveat to that is, you know, I'm not somebody who particularly loves episodic content. There's kind of some narrative progression sometimes in the show, but it's pretty episodic for the most part. So I think if you're an adult trying to get into a show that's got heavier themes, don't expect anything like that from this. If you watched all of Courage the Cowardly Dog and you want more content like that, this is your golden opportunity. This is exactly what you would love. So I would say that it actually does meet qualifications for all ages. I wouldn't say it's offensive towards anyone. It really comes down to a matter of taste, of if you like and appreciate that dark juxtaposition in your cartoons.
I'm going to actually say that this is for teens, because I know that when we were younger, that was the main audience watching it. It was designed to be that way too. How this show originated is that Nickelodeon came to the creator of the show, Jonan Vasquez. They said they wanted something edgier for the 11 to 15 age group. They never wanted this to be for kids. He's actually on the record as saying, for the most part, they didn't push back on him in the beginning. They wanted this show to be what it was. And despite that, going into the second season, they abruptly canceled it and decided, actually, this isn't our brand. We changed our minds. I think that's a shame, because it had a huge audience and still has a huge audience. I do think it's cool that this show was on air and that it was able to do what it did, but it really was for that 11 to 15 age group. And I think younger kids mostly are going to find it a little bit dark. And I don't want to speak for everybody, because like you said, there's going to be younger kids who like darker stuff. I can really only speak for myself, who generally wanted to laugh or have fun with whatever I was watching. And to some extent, I'm still that way. Well, all right. Adults, some of them, are going to walk into some of these episodes and just be able to be amazed that this was a kid's cartoon. And I think they will get some joy out of that. But you talked about it being formulaic, and I think that maybe that's part of the reason that I struggled with it a little bit. Once in a while, as an adult, I will like something darker, but I want it to keep me hanging. I want every episode to lead me somewhere and feel like, oh, maybe there's a mystery here or something. And the fact that every single episode comes and goes didn't capture my imagination the way that I would want to, because I just feel like I'm coming into every episode, not necessarily like feeling great at the end of it. That said, you really did make some terrific points that have made me reevaluate how I feel about the show a little bit, and it genuinely would raise my overall show rating. I do like these two main characters feuding with each other, and the poetry of them not being able to bond with anybody else their age because everybody is stupid.
I guess I'm just not smart enough.
Yeah, stupid.
It hurts me to see all you dirty monsters.
But it's not that unusual from how two people might find each other in the real world, and for whatever reason, they don't connect with anybody. But this cat and mouse thing, it manifests in this beautiful symmetry. I just wish that I could find a Zim to my Dib. I'm not an alien. What do you think of that?
We've compared this to Courage a lot this episode, and I think it's a good comparison because I usually don't like the episodic content, but I do love some. Usually the thing that makes me love them is just the fact, is just the fact that they make me feel like, what could happen next? With Courage, every episode I'm like, okay, like, what are we doing now? And I feel that way about Zim too. You know, I'll watch one episode like today with, he shoots them in a wormhole to a moose in a parallel dimension. SpongeBob wasn't doing that. When all of these other episodic cartoons are doing such recycled content, plot lines that have been done a million times. Let's go on a camping trip together. Oh, it's too hot and we need to beat the heat. This show does this in a way where it's like, I have no idea what plotline is going to come ever. Other shows that did that right, like Phineas and Ferb, it was formulaic, but it did formulaic perfectly right, because you always wanted to see what the formula was going to bring out next. Invader Zim, I think, hits that medium really well, because every episode is just so wild. In addition to being charming with the relationship between the two characters.
You lose me every time you slander SpongeBob, but for the most part, I do 100% agree with what you're saying on what makes a formulaic show awesome. This has been a really good talk. I really liked talking about this episode with you, even though we're a little bit on different sides. Obviously, we have different tastes too. I just don't like darker content normally. But I think that you articulated really well what the strengths of this show are. And even though I didn't love it, I still agree with you, and it does make me want to check out a little bit more in the future. I think this is a hell of a kickoff to Alien Month. I'm really excited to get to what we've got coming up next week. We are going to be talking about Lilo and Stitch the series, and I think that the contrast between what we watch today and what we watch next week, which is obviously much lighter, is going to be fascinating. So please subscribe and hang around for that. Follow us on our social medias if you want to get updated on what's coming up. And yeah. Cool. Let's conquer the Earth together, audience.
Man, that was a really specific thing to say.
Oh, I mean, it just came to my mind.
Yeah. I like it. Let's colloquialize that. Let's conquer the Earth.
It's funny because most people would assume that you are more likely to be an alien, and I literally am.
I like your shirt. Twilight Zone's cool.
Thanks, man. I like yours.